That black hinge is not ruined. It looks like cheap pot metal now. Dull, dark, almost bronze. After years hanging on a door nobody's repainted. Here's the 10-second test nobody tells you about. Touch a magnet to it. If it sticks, that's not brass. It's steel or zinc with a few microns of brass plated on, and polish will go straight through that plating to gray metal, forever, no coming back. If it doesn't stick, you're holding solid brass, and everything ahead is safe. So before you spend $12 on a bottle of brass polish, or worse, throw out a good piece of hardware because you've decided it's beyond saving, that black is not dirt, and it is not wear. It's a chemical film you can dissolve in your kitchen. I'm Artie Sterling. 30 years teaching shop class, 10 before that as a Finnish carpenter, and I've pulled more black hardware back to gold than I can count. Here's what's actually happening on the metal, because the fix only makes sense once you see it. Brass is copper and zinc, melted together. That's the whole alloy, and it's why it shines gold instead of red like pure copper. Copper is a restless metal. Leave it out in the air, and it reacts with oxygen, and it reacts with the sulfur compounds floating around in every house. Off cooking, off rubber, off your own skin, off the air itself in a city. Slowly, over years, the surface builds a thin skin of copper oxide and copper sulfide. That's the tarnish. It's black, or brown, or that dull greenish crust you see on old outdoor fixtures, and every bit of it is sitting on top of the brass, not inside it. The metal underneath hasn't lost a single atom. It isn't damaged, and it isn't worn thin. It's wearing a coat, and the coat is what's black. Which means the same rule applies here that applies to rust on iron. Dissolve the coat, and you get the metal back exactly as it was. Here's the job. First, and I already said it, but it's worth repeating with your hand on the piece, do the magnet test before you do anything else. Steel and zinc are cheap and brass is not, so an enormous amount of what gets sold as brass hardware, especially anything made after about 1960, is a few microns of real brass plated onto something cheaper underneath. Polish is abrasive by design. On solid brass, that's fine, because there's brass all the way through. On plated hardware, you sand through that plating in about the time it takes to notice, and under it is gray pot metal or bare steel that no polish on earth will ever bring back to gold. The magnet costs you nothing and takes 10 seconds, and it's the difference between restoring a piece and destroying one. Second, look at it in good light. If the tarnish is even, the same dark color all over, that's tarnish, and the fix below will work. But if it's blotchy, bright gold in patches, and black or cloudy in others, that's not tarnish at all. That's failing lacquer. Most 20th century brass hardware was coated at the factory with a clear lacquer to stop it tarnishing in the first place. And lacquer fails in patches, not all at once. No amount of polishing touches lacquer, because you'd be polishing the lacquer, not the brass underneath it. Strip that first. Acetone or lacquer thinner on a rag, window open, will lift it. Some pieces come clean with nothing but hot water and a soft brush. Only once the lacquer's off does the brass even see the polish. Third, the polish itself. Salt and white vinegar mixed into a paste, or lemon juice with a spoonful of baking soda, or, and I mean this, plain ketchup out of the bottle. All three work for the identical reason: a mild acid to dissolve the copper oxide and copper sulfide, and a mild abrasive to carry it off once it's loose. Ketchup isn't a folk remedy. It's diluted vinegar and a bit of grit from the tomato solids, doing the same job as the other two out of a bottle you've already got open. Rub it on with a soft cloth or an old toothbrush for the corners of a hinge. Let it sit 2 or 3 minutes, and watch the black start coming off on the rag. Fourth, rinse it in plain water. Vinegar and salt left sitting will keep working after you've stopped wanting them to, and dry it completely. A wet piece sitting in a drawer is exactly how you got here the first time, and here's the part people don't expect. Bare, polished brass starts tarnishing again within weeks because you haven't changed anything about the copper, you've only reset the clock. You've got two honest choices. Accept that and do this again every couple of months, which costs 10 minutes and nothing else. Or seal it, a thin coat of paste wax buffed on, or a light clear lacquer out of a spray can, which holds the shine a year or two before it needs doing again. Nobody sells you, polish it once and it stays gold forever, because that's not how copper behaves. And I'd rather tell you that now than have you write me in 3 months asking what went wrong. And once you see that black on brass is a film, not a verdict, you start noticing it everywhere in the house. A brass lamp base gone the color of an old penny. The posts on a brass bed frame nobody's touched since the wedding. The ball feet on a fireplace set. Cabinet pulls on a china cabinet that's been in the family longer than you have. Same test first, same paste second, every single time. I had a girl in my second period class bring in a shoebox of drawer pulls her grandfather left behind, maybe 15 of them, black as a stove, and she was sure they were some kind of pot metal, worthless, and she'd only kept the box because it was his. Handed her a magnet from the bin by the door. Not one of them stuck. She looked at me like I'd done a magic trick. We mixed a paste right there on the bench. Salt, vinegar, a rag. And by the end of the period, she had 4 of them sitting gold on a paper towel, turning them over in her hands, not saying much. She put the rest on a dresser she refinished that spring, and she told me years later that's the piece she took with her to her first apartment. Hardware her grandfather bought decades before she was born, and it only needed 10 minutes and something out of the pantry. So why doesn't anybody tell you this? I don't think it's anything sinister. There's a whole shelf of brass polish in every hardware store, with a marketing budget behind every bottle, because buy this is a sentence you can print on a label. Touch a magnet to it first isn't a product. Nobody makes a dime off the saying of it, so it just doesn't get said. That's the whole story. It's the same reason my father knew it, and I had to relearn it myself. Watching kids in my shop nearly polish good hardware down to bare steel before I started making them do the magnet test first. Now the honest limits, because I'd rather you hear them from me. If the piece is genuinely old, a real antique, not 20th century production hardware, that dark patina is sometimes where the value is. On a 200-year-old escutcheon or an early brass fixture, collectors often want the aged look, and stripping it to bright gold can take money off the piece instead of adding it. If you've inherited something and you're not sure what it's worth, ask somebody before you touch it with anything. And if the brass is pitted all the way through, actual craters, not just a dark film, this will clean it, but it won't make it smooth again. That's cosmetic, and it isn't this trick's job. A word on safety. If you're stripping lacquer, do it with the window open. Acetone and lacquer thinner fumes are not something you want to breathe in a closed room, and acetone is flammable, so keep it well away from anything with a pilot light. Gloves if your skin is sensitive to vinegar or citrus, held that long. And never mix cleaning chemicals together to make something stronger. That instinct has sent people to the emergency room over things a lot less mysterious than brass polish. That's it. No $15 bottle of brass polish, and no throwing out a good hinge because you thought it was ruined. 10 seconds with a magnet tells you what you're actually holding. Salt and vinegar, or lemon and baking soda, or the ketchup in your fridge, takes the black off, and a little wax keeps it that way a while longer. Go find that box of hardware in the garage, or the junk drawer, the stuff you assumed was too far gone to bother with. Then come down to the comments and tell me what's an old trick your father or your grandfather taught you that you still use today. I read every one of them. Keep it simple, keep it cheap, and do it right the first time. The folks who built the furniture in this country knew that, and we're going to remember it together.